Number 1. When I was young, around 14 or 15 years old, my family used to camp at the state park. Every night my friend and I would walk through the woods. We call this the ritual. This particular night we decided to walk further into the woods than usual. We had flashlights, but we liked to try and navigate through the woods with them turned off. We were about a half a mile from the nearest campsite when we heard soft whispering behind us. Obviously, we hit the flashlights and spun around, but didn't see anything. So we kept walking and we heard it again. This time we stopped and looked around a bit before we decided to head back to our campsite. Then we see what's whispering. It's a lady crawling on the ground whispering just random words. She was wearing dark clothes and was covered in dirt. When she sees that we notice her, she stands up and declares that she is looking for her campsite. We ended up walking her back to the camping ground and tried helping her find her group. Turns out she was just super drunk or high and got lost trying to find a bathroom. Her friends didn't even notice she was missing, and if we didn't go that far into the woods, she would have been lost all night. It was pretty creepy. Number 2. My parents' story, not mine. They were on a canoe trip way up in the nowhere Saskatchewan, far from any semblance of civilization. One morning, they hear rustling outside the tent. Still half asleep, my dad sits up and tries to figure out what is going on. The noise is loud and very close. Before he can collect himself enough to go investigate, his whole side of the tent collapses in on top of him. The weight lifted quickly. Now entirely awake, my parents scrambled to open the tent flap and figure out what was going on. About 10 feet away was a spooked black bear staring confused and concerned at the tent. After being yelled at a bit, it ran off. We figured it had been foraging in the bushes right behind the tent and lost its balance. So my dad can truly say he has been set on by a bear. Number 3. While I was camping, I was out walking around the bush hunting for upland birds. I walked through a bit of a valley as a shortcut to get to another area. When I came across a guy standing on a trail with an AR-15 at ready position. Instantly, the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and instinctively knowing this wasn't the place I wanted to be. Trying my best to stay calm, I said, "Hey, just out bird hunting. How are you doing?" The guy responds,
Fine.
Long pause.
I'm hunting deer.
Deer season wasn't open, and AR-15 are not legal for deer, and he wasn't dressed for deer hunting. As a matter of fact, he looked homeless, hadn't changed his clothes, or bathed, or shaved in several days obviously, and looked emancipated. Think of a scariest 50-year-old meth addict you can think of, put an AR-15 in his hands, and you're probably pretty fucking close. I asked him, "Do you know the best way for me to go find some birds?" He responded,
Well, I imagine you might find some back the way you came.
His voice got noticeably sharper with the "back the way you came," and I obviously took the hint. I don't know if there was a meth lab or something else just down the trail, but I was certainly happy to leave. I reported the incident to the sheriff the next day, but I don't know if anything ever came of it. Number 4. This will get buried, but I have never gone camping or out into the woods at night after this trip. A few friends and I had a long weekend, 5 days off from school, and we decided to go camping in the North Georgia mountains. We packed a big 10-person tent, There was 5 of us, 2 guys and 3 girls, and loaded up my buddy's truck. He and I had some experience being outdoors, camping, hiking, hunting, and he's an army vet, so we packed really well and had all sorts of amenities like propane, stove, grill, fold-up cots, portable shower, and stuff like that. We were in it for the whole weekend. We left on Wednesday afternoon and parked the truck in a small town and started hiking into the woods to find a spot. It was a fairly normal hike until we got about 4 or 5 miles in. The first time we noticed something strange was when we came into a little clearing in the woods with a big pond, tiny lake in it. We stepped into the open area and everything stopped. No birds chirping, no squirrels running around, even the clouds and wind seemed to stop moving. My buddy and I both thought, well shit, there's gotta be a predator nearby, and took out our handguns. It's the lion Kennesaw, just in case. I never seen a bear in Georgia, so we figured it was a mountain lion or maybe some coyotes. My friend and I were looking around the edge of the clearing and he grabbed me. He nodded across the water, and when I looked, I saw what seemed to be a woman standing just at a tree line. She was maybe 150 yards away. We assumed she must live somewhere nearby, and so we continued walking past the water and clearing. As we headed back into the woods, I looked over my shoulder at where she was standing, but she was gone. The sounds of the forest returned once we got into the trees. We made a campsite about 2 miles past that, as it was getting late and we didn't want to be stuck building a camp in the dark. We got everything unpacked and set up and built a fire, popped out a couple of beers and sat down to hang out. There was a girl I was interested in on the trip, and we'd been flirting, so after a few beers and the sun was down, we snuck away from the fire under the pretense that she wanted to help me setting up a part of the tent. We started fooling around, and after a few minutes she stopped and looked at me funny. I asked what was wrong and she said nothing, it just got really quiet. We both quickly dressed and headed back outside to the fire. The others hadn't noticed anything strange and didn't mention anything wrong except joking with us that it took us a long time to fix the tent. On the first morning, we found that the propane stove had been turned on but not ignited and had gone completely empty overnight. But none of us had used it though. The second morning we noticed that some things had been missing. A lantern we left outside but the fire was gone, and my crush's sweatshirt she left on a little folding chair stool. We figured we just misplaced things or someone had used them and put them somewhere else. During the second full day, Friday, we were looking for the waterfall that we read online was in the area. We were following the river upstream when everything went silent again. My buddy nudged me while we were walking and indicated up to the top of the hill next to the river. I looked up through the trees and was just able to make out the figure of the same woman. Same clothes and all, just standing. I couldn't tell if she was looking at us or not, but she was just standing there. My buddy told the girls he thought he saw a mountain lion following us and was just going to scare it off. He hustled up the hill, making a lot of noise, and came back about 10 minutes later. He said he skated off to the girls, but told me aside that the woman wasn't there when he got up there. We found the waterfall and put it out of our minds as the girls decided to skinny dip in the river, and you know, titties can solve anything. We hiked back to our camp and found it a mess. It wasn't totally trashed, but it was clear something had gotten into our stuff. We told the girls it was probably raccoons, but we both took our guns to our bed with us that night. That night shift went sideways. I remember waking up because my crush was squeezing my arm. We had been sleeping cuddled up together. I opened my eyes and she hushed me before I could ask what was going on. There was a complete silence all around the tent. I looked across the tent and my buddy was sitting halfway up, looking around. We both stayed awake for the next 2 hours until the sun started coming up, and then packed our stuff and we were all headed out. The entire hike back into the town was eerily silent. There were a couple of points I thought I saw the woman through the trees, but never got a clear sight of her. We avoided the lake completely and got back to the truck in what seemed like a half the time it took to get out to the camp. After we were safely on the road back home, the girls and my buddy all started to tell everyone about moments they thought they heard or saw the woman all weekend but were too freaked out to mention it out loud. Like she would go away if we ignored her. The wild part was none of us could describe her face. It's almost like it was blurry. No idea who she was, but I never been camping or hiking at night since. Number 5. I had moved to Southwest Washington for work after college. The Blue Mountains were very close by, and being a hunter, I was very interested in learning the land for hunting season. I went on several solo scouting trips in various areas, always picking locations that would put me the farthest from any public road or access point. I find in hunting that most people are too lazy to get much of the roads, so less competition in the more remote areas. Being outdoors has never been anything new to me. I grew up on a farm and ranch in Montana and have spent most of my youth working outside and dealing with animals. Not only would I have to tend to various livestock, but I was raised into hunting and above all enjoy calling animals. I was 10 when I fooled my first coyote that I was a dying jackrabbit, and since then I have mimicked everything from rodents to bull elk well enough to fool predators and big game routinely. I know with the explosion of bow hunting popularity that animal calls have been more commonplace, but I don't think that you can appreciate it to the same extent as a country boy can that learned how to echo back the calls of the cattle, horses, chickens, etc. before old enough to attend the school. I'm not bragging here, I'm just laying the groundwork that I have a very trained ear for animal calls. So I set up one afternoon to run up the blues to scout out for the game. I got a late start but no real worries as most of the spotting of animal activity occurs at first and last light. I was able to only hike a couple of miles from the road before I needed to find a spot to camp and watch the game. I climbed up the ridge and found a small, somewhat level spot to set the camp. I had a pretty good view of the surrounding area, but ended up only seeing a couple of whitetails before dark. I kept a dry camp, no fire, and just turned in early for the night to get a good start in the morning. I was awoken at about 1 AM to probably the worst headache I have ever had. It would be just a surge of pain, then temper off, then come back. I was very careful about my hydration on the pack-in, so I knew it wasn't dehydration, about my only real concern on the trip. So I'm lying in my bivvy, with this on-again, off-again pulse of pain trying my best to diagnose the cause. But my ears finally tuned to this strange sound coming from the mountainside above me. My thoughts moved from the headache to this animal call. It's not matching any of the calls I know. It's not matching any of the general patterns I know either. It's too loud and repetitive. It's unique. It's very, very strange. I know instantly that this is a large mammal call. You can say, how do I know that? And all I can say is that I have a lifetime experience like I stated above. It's definitely a mammal. It's big, with a deep, hollow vocal chambers, and although this is evident, I tell myself it is likely some Washington bird to ease my mind. After all, Washington must have different birds than Montana. So now I'm stuck. that if I focus on the sound, I can't believe my bullshit that this is a bird. And as soon as I try not to think about it, the surging pain of my headache is unbearable. Close to 2 AM, I make a judgment call and pull on my camp and head back to the truck. With this call repeating the whole time before this decision, the way I hiked to my camp was pretty direct but rough. However, there was a gated road just above my camp that circled back to the main road where my truck was parked. Distance would be longer to follow the road, but easier to travel in the night. Also, it led me directly towards this call before it would start to circle back to the truck. So with my 1911 in hand, I walked that road out. The interesting part is that the sound stayed above me as I walked out, always directly up the mountainside, and after climbing up to the road only maybe 200-300 yards distant. The animal clearly shadowed my departure, following along up the mountain a ways. As soon as I dropped down out of the mountains, my headache completely cleared. I have since decided this was likely attributed to the altitude sickness, since I was also having a hard time regulating my breathing. The real fun came when I got home and had started to searching bird sounds for Washington. At this point about 3 or 4 AM. My search was not producing anything close to what I heard. The small nagging voice finally had me Google Bigfoot call, and damn if I didn't find the audio file of what I just heard almost instantly. That call was so unique that on my drive home I grabbed a mouth reed and was able to duplicate it quite quickly. There is no doubt in my mind what I heard. Of course, I have a doubt of any sound on the internet labeled Bigfoot whoops, because who can say what call a mythological creature really makes, and how could you ever be sure? I can say that I never heard it again, even on return trips to that area. I even walked through the area it originated from, and it was a thick, nasty north slope face full of trees and vegetation, but I didn't find the source of the sound. Hey guys, it's me, Dream. Thank you so much for watching this video. It means truly a lot to me. And yeah, like I told you, this one is longer one, so yay. I also, as you can see, moved on from my regular subject, my family stories. I really wanted to do this one because I really like camping stories myself, so I was like, hey, I really want to narrate camping stories, so here it goes. I hope you enjoy listening to it as much as I enjoyed making it. And yeah, I guess that would be it. Oh, also, if you like this kind of stuff, please consider liking it and subscribing. It means a lot to me. And yeah, that will be... I can't speak no more. Yeah, that would be it. Thank you so much for watching again, and I hope you have a great day, night, evening, morning, whatever. Bye!